Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any update from Rouse IAS Study Circle. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rouse IAS Study Circle to get the relevant materials and important updates. Hello everyone, I welcome you to the Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of the newspaper analysis. So today let us take up the Indian Express Explained section from the last week and The Hindu from the last Sunday. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and the timestamping of these topics have been provided in the description box. Now our first topic is related to stubble burning, and from newspapers we regularly witness that stubble burning has emerged as one of the major problems in especially the North Indian region, not only from the environmental sense but also from the human health angles. So in this section we will learn the basics of stubble burning, and we will also learn that why it has created such a mess in this specific region. So this news has come in the following context. Recently, a Bangalore-based firm has provided a technology to aid the farmers spray decomposers over 5 lakh acres. So the point is that recently some firm has come up with some technological solution to deal with the problems of this stubble burning. And the syllabus highlights of this topic is that it comes under General Studies paper 3 with the intersection of the technology part and the environmental part, with the micro topic conservation, environmental pollution and degradation. So UPSC in 2019 asked this question. It read that consider the following: carbon monoxide, methane, ozone and sulfur dioxide. The question asked was that which of the above are released into atmosphere due to the burning of the crops or biomass residue. So answer to this question was all of the above gases were released. So in similar context you should be aware that what are the exact pollutants or gases which are released by this stubble burning. So first we will understand that what exactly do we mean by stubble burning. Stubble burning is a practice of intentionally setting the fire to the straw stubbles that remain after the grains such as rice and wheat have been harvested. So in the months around the October, when the rice is harvested, the farmers resort to this practice to get rid of the remains left over in their field. So the cheap and the best way for them is to burn the stubble. As you can see in this picture, that the stubbles are being burned, and this practice is most prominent in the northern and northwestern Indian region, including the states of Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and few parts of Rajasthan also. So this problem is particularly severe in northern India because of the intensive rice wheat rotation. So the cropping pattern of the northern India, because of several geographical factors as well as human factors, is that the rice wheat bi-cropping rotation is mainly done in a year. So both of these crops are highly water intensive, as well as the period between the harvesting of the rice and sowing of the wheat, that is the months of the October and November, is so short. So in order to get rid of the remains on the agricultural field, the farmers set fire to the remaining straw stubbles. But this cheap and easy practice for them has created numerous problems in the entire region. So that is why now we will understand that why stubble burning is a big challenge. First, as we discussed, that it releases a huge amount of gases which pollute the environment. The most important gases released here are nitrogen dioxide, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide and methane. So these are the prominent gases released during this process. The second is that the stubble burning negatively impacts the soil fertility. How? There are two reasons. First is that the excessive heat leads to loss of moisture, as well as it also kills several microbes which are there to sustain the soil ecosystem. And the second reason is that it destroys the nutrients as well. The third biggest challenge which this practice has created is that because of the tremendous pollution and the suspended particles in the atmosphere, it reduces the visibility, which in turn affects the traffic movement in that area. The next biggest challenge is the seasonal coincidence. As we discussed that this practice normally takes place in the months of October and November, you know that these months also mark the arrival of the winter season. So what happens exactly in the winter season? Why this problem exaggerates multiple times in the winter season? So what happens is during winters, this whole area experiences a very low temperature, and low temperature means that these regions experience high pressure conditions, which are anticyclonic conditions marked by stability. So now this stability is important factor, because when the atmospheric stability is there in a particular area, the winds stop flowing, or we can say the speed of the wind reduces, which in turn do not allow the pollutants or the dust particles which are suspended in the environment to dissipate or diffuse. They just remain stable for longer period of time. This basic concept is one of the biggest reasons that why environmental pollution becomes more severe during winters, and this is exactly what happens in this region. During this season, this region experiences northwesterly winds, and these winds, despite having very low speed, brings all the environmental pollutants towards the region of Delhi, and thus the Delhi becomes one of the most polluted areas during these seasons. And the last and the obvious challenge is that because of all the above factors, there are several health issues also. The gases which are released by the stubble burning create several cardiovascular, respiratory as well as allergic diseases. But now the question rises that when we are well aware about all the negative impacts of the stubble burning, and we also know that there are several rules and regulations which are there in order to prohibit the stubble burning, this stubble burning continues. So that is why we must go into deeper analysis that why the stubble burning still continues. The first reason is that this is easy and cheap practice for the farmers, because they have to clear their fields after the harvesting of rice in order to sow the wheat crops. It becomes easy for them to just burn off all the remains which are there on their fields. The second is the vote bank politics. As we all know that farmers share a significant vote share in India's political system. So that is why all the major political parties want the farmers' support to increase the chances of their winnability. And this in turn leads to non-enforcement of all the orders given by National Green Tribunal as well as the provisions of Environmental Protection Act. So there is a lack of will among the political parties. Next important reason is that there is absence of alternatives on the ground level. Now around 86% of the farmers in India are small and marginal. So they neither have adequate capital nor they are exposed to the modern technologies. So the point is that on ground level there are absence of alternatives. They do not have solution that what they have to do with the remains on their fields. So that is why they resort to such practices even after knowing that they cause several health issues too. And the last and the obvious reason is that there are lack of policy initiatives. Our policymakers, despite knowing the negative impacts of the stubble burning, still are reluctant to form time-bound policies in order to enforce all the rules and regulations which are there to prohibit the stubble burning. Now in this context, we should understand that what technology this particular news article talks about. Now this technology is named as a boomer spray. As you can see that this particular machine is a hybrid of the tractor as well as an Autobot. And this picture, I hope that it is clearly visible that there is something being sprayed on the agricultural field from this machine. So what is this? These are basically the biodecomposers. Now the point is that if the farmers do not burn the stubble after harvesting, generally it takes around 6 to 8 weeks for the stubble to naturally decompose by themselves. But as we discussed that farmers do not have this much time because they have to sow the wheat crops. So what these biodecomposers do, they accelerate the process of turning the rice stubble into compost. Now this brings two benefits. First is that decomposition becomes very fast. And the experiment suggests that these biodecomposers can decompose the entire stubble in around 8 days. And the second major benefit is that it is making a compost. It is biodecomposers. So this will in turn enhance the fertility of the soil also. So that is why this boomer spray technology was in news, and you must be aware about this technology. Moving on to our next topic. Recently, India and Denmark have signed a Green Pact in order to tackle the climate change and environmental problems. As we are well aware of the fact that in recent times there have been many bilateral, regional as well as multilateral steps which are focused towards tackling the issues of environment and climate change. In this very line, India and Denmark have also elevated their partnership in this context. So the context of the news is that India and Denmark have agreed on the measures to take forward their unique green strategic partnership. And further, they have signed 4 more agreements aiming to boost the cooperation in green technologies and management of natural resources such as groundwater. So this topic falls under the General Studies paper 2, International Relations, and the subtopic of bilateral agreements involving India and or affecting the Indian interests. Now this theme is very important from the UPSC prelims point of view, because this theme has intersection of 2 topics. One is related to the environment and climate change, and the other is related to the international relations. Every year there are questions which are asked in UPSC prelims. For example, in UPSC 2018 there was a question that Momentum for Change Climate Neutral Now is an initiative launched by. The answer to this question is UNFCCC Secretariat. In a similar fashion, there can be a question on the bilateral agreements also, and one of these agreements are between India and Denmark, which we are going to discuss in this session. So as we have read that India and Denmark have elevated their relationship to the Green Strategic Partnership, we should have a brief outline of the historical context of this agreement. In the year 2020, there was a prime ministerial level meeting between India and Denmark, and they decided to elevate the bilateral partnership to the level of Green Strategic Partnership. In that very meeting, it was made clear that Green Strategic Partnership will strive to attain objectives of these 2 important agreements. The first one was related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the other one was related to the Paris Agreement. And to achieve these things, a 5-year action plan was devised for 2021 to 2026. And in the latest meeting, both the countries have agreed to focus primarily on the renewable energy and the climate change in order to attain the twin objectives of SDG and Paris Agreement. Besides this, there are 4 other important agreements which were signed. The most important among them is the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library Access. Now, as the name suggests, it is the India's digital knowledge repository of India's traditional knowledge, primarily dealing with the medicines. The second agreement was in the sector of skill development and entrepreneurship. The third agreement was in relation to the scientific and industrial research, and this was done between the CSIR and Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland. And the last agreement was signed between the IISc Bangalore and Danfoss Industries Private Limited to deal with the natural refrigerants for tropical climates. Now this meeting also laid its stress on the necessity of the multilateral cooperation. There were 2 major areas where the need of the multilateral cooperation was focused. The first was in order to have a dedicated and effective COVID response, and in line with this, India and Denmark agreed that WHO should be reformed, because we have witnessed the role which WHO has played during this COVID pandemic, and several experts have criticized the functioning of the WHO and have termed it biased or partisan too. And the second important thing was that Denmark has formally supported the India's stand at reforming the UNSC. Denmark has supported the India's permanent seat in the UNSC and also the India's demand to reform the United Nations Security Council as a whole. And similarly, India has also agreed to the Denmark's claim of having a non-permanent membership at UNSC for the period of 2025 to 26. Now, summing up the entire topic in brief, there was a Green Pact signed between India and Denmark, according to which both the countries have agreed to elevate their partnership to the Green Strategic Partnership. We discussed the previous year question and we also discussed the historical background of this Green Strategic Partnership, which is aiming to attain the objectives of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as well as the targets set up in the Paris deal. And in line with this, there is a 5-year action plan which is agreed between both the countries for the period of 2021 to 26. Then we saw the other 4 key agreements between India and Denmark, which were related to traditional knowledge digital library, skill development, scientific and industrial research, and the natural refrigerants for tropical climates. And finally, we saw that both the countries have agreed to strengthen the multilateral cooperation in today's time when many of the big countries are focusing on regionalism. The next topic in news was that Ethiopian forces has struck the Tigray rebels. Now this topic is relevant from the UPSC prelims point of view because of the location of Tigray. So the context of this topic is that Ethiopian army has launched to coordinate the attacks on all fronts against the forces from the northern Tigray region. So you must be aware about the conflict which is going on there in this region, and this has created a huge humanitarian crisis with the United Nations warning that about 4 lakh people were living in famine-like conditions. So from time to time, UPSC have regularly asked location-based questions in prelims. For example, in 2015, the question asked was that the area known as Golan Heights sometimes appears in the news in the context of the events related to. The answer of this is B. In similar fashion, the question can be asked on the region Tigray, AFAR and Amhara. So you can see that all these 3 provinces lie in the North Ethiopian area. So again, I am repeating that relevance of this topic is purely from the locational point of view to answer the question in prelims. So our next topic which we are going to discuss is from the space sector. Recently, NASA has launched one mission which will analyze the Jupiter Trojan asteroids and will help us to understand the evolution of our solar system. Now, under this topic, we will understand the basic concepts that what do we exactly mean by asteroids and the types of asteroids therein. We will analyze this with the help of a diagram. Then from the prelims point of view, we will also discuss certain key facts about this mission. So this is a short topic. Let's begin. So this topic was in news because of this context. NASA is set to launch Lucy. This is the name of the mission. Its first mission to explore the Jupiter Trojan asteroids. This topic falls under the GS3 syllabus of technology and the micro syllabus of awareness in the fields of space. Now this space sector is very favorite area for the UPSC examination, especially in the prelims section. As a sample question, I have taken one question from the UPSC 2011, which was in the context of the difference between the asteroids and the comets. The question provides us 3 statements. The first is that the asteroids are small rocky planetoids, while comets are formed of frozen gases held together by rocky and metallic materials. The second statement says that asteroids are found mostly between the orbiters of Jupiter and Mars, while comets are mostly found between the Venus and Mercury. And the third statement says that the comets show a perceptible glowing tail while asteroids do not. You have to find the correct statements among these. Answer for this question is B, because second statement is incorrect and the first statement is true, because this is the basic definition of the asteroids and comets. Now we will understand that what are asteroids. Asteroids are believed to be the remnants of the early solar system. They are rocky bodies in a solid form. Asteroids are divided into three categories. Now this is important, please understand this carefully. The first category is the asteroids which are found in the main asteroid belt, that is between the planets of Mars and Jupiter. Please see this picture. This is our sun and these are the planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars and Jupiter. So between the Mars and Jupiter, we see a clear ring of rocky solid particles. This is known as the main asteroid belt. So the main asteroid belt is between the Mars and the Jupiter. The second category comes of Trojans. These are the asteroids that share an orbit. Important thing, the asteroids that share an orbit with a larger planet. NASA reports the presence of Jupiter, Neptune and Mars Trojans. However, in 2011, they also reported the Earth Trojan. Then there is one important word, that is swarms. What are swarms? Swarms are basically the Jupiter asteroids or the Jupiter Trojans. In the same picture, you see that in the orbit of this planet, that is Jupiter, we are again seeing the rocky particles. So these are the Trojans. From the findings, it has been observed that there are two belts of asteroids in the orbit of Jupiter. One is ahead of the Jupiter and one is behind the Jupiter. So the Lucy mission is going to study both of these asteroid belts, that is the Jupiter Trojans. And the third category is the near Earth asteroids. In short, they are called NEA. These are those asteroids which has orbits that pass close to the Earth. Some of the asteroids also cross the orbit of the Earth, and that is why they are also called as Earth crossers. So the researches show us that there are more than 10,000 such asteroids. However, 1400 of these 10,000 asteroids are classified as potentially hazardous asteroids. These asteroids can hit the Earth very hard, and several researches are going on in this field also. Now we will see some basic key facts about the mission Lucy by NASA. First is that it is a solar powered mission. So that means that it is based on the renewable energy source. It is estimated to be over 12 years long, during the course of which the spacecraft will visit 8 asteroids. The spacecraft's first encounter will be with an asteroid that lies in the main belt, that is the main asteroid belt between the Mars and Jupiter, and the name of this asteroid is the Donald Johnson asteroid. Again, this name is also very important from the prelims point of view. So summing up this topic in brief, first we discuss the context of this news that NASA is set to launch a Lucy mission. Then we analyze the previous year question, and then in detail we analyze the three categories of asteroids. The first one were in the main asteroid belt, second were the Trojans which were found in the orbits of large planets, and the third category was the near Earth asteroids, because of which even we as a humans on Earth face certain challenges, because there is a possibility of these asteroids hitting the Earth very hard. And in the last we discuss certain key facts about the mission Lucy of NASA. Moving on to our next topic, the public-private partnership breaches the space frontier. Now this topic has come in the context that recently Prime Minister has launched Indian Space Association, which is an industry body consisting of various stakeholders of the Indian space domain. Under this topic, we are going to discuss these major questions related to this topic. The first is that what is the significance of the ISPA formation? Second, what are the stated aims of ISPA? Third, the composition and the stakeholders involved in this modernization program. And the last, the concept of satellite-based internet and its importance in India. So let us begin. As we all know that one of the main goals of the Indian Space Organization is to supplement the government's effort towards making India a global leader in commercial space-based excursions. And in line with this aim, the ISPA has been formed. This topic falls under the syllabus of General Studies paper 3 under the section of technology. And the micro topics of the achievements of Indians in science and technology and indigenization of the technology. And also this topic comes under the awareness in the fields of space sector. So as we all know that in recent days, the government, in order to mobilize the resources, boost investment and enhance innovation, is increasingly adopting the PPP approach, that is the public-private partnership approach. The government is using this PPP approach in various sectors and similarly in the space sector also. So the significance of the ISPA formation lies in the fact that throughout the world, the private players in the domain of the space industry is growing. For example, you must have heard about the SpaceX of Elon Musk and Blue Origin of Jeff Bezos. They have taken the lead in the space flight, promising to start the tourist flights to space. However, we know that in India, the role of private sector is very limited vis-a-vis the ISRO in space domain. So the primary and the major role in the space sector in India is still played by the ISRO, which is not a private entity. However, ISRO is doing a tremendous job, but still, in order to achieve all these things, we need to leverage our private sector also, and this goes in line with the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan too. So now we will discuss the stated aims of the ISPA. The first aim is to make India a global leader in the commercial space-based excursions. Now you might have read about these news that we are coming up with nano satellites and micro satellites, whereby we are also exporting our services to the foreign players. In many of the missions, we have carried the satellites from the developed world, including the USA also. So in order to boost the government efforts, this ISPA, this industry body, has been created to make India a global leader in this sector. The second important aim is to enable the policy formulation with the multi-stakeholder approach so that we have a definite foolproof long-term as well as short-term policy framework which can guide our steps, including government as well as private steps, so as to make India a leader in the commercial space explorations. And the third important aim is to build the global linkages for the Indian space industry and to bring in two important components, that is the technology as well as the investments. So now we will move on to the stakeholders involved in this organization. Now, as we all know that the multi-stakeholder approach is very important because it gives us various point of views. And looking at a particular thing from different point of view is the key to make a long-term sustainable policy. So this principle is adopted in this very organization also. The members of the organization include the government bodies such as ISRO and the private telecom companies such as Bharti Airtel, Tata Group, L&T, MapMyIndia and several others. So basically this is a PPP, public-private partnership principle based organization, and therefore it will be represented by the leading domestic and global corporations that have advanced capabilities in space and satellite technologies. And you will be surprised to know that very big players like Starlink and Amazon are also in discussions with the Indian government for a license to offer satellite based internet. Now this word is important. And in line with this, the SpaceX has planned to create a network of 12,000 satellites, of which over 1,300 are already skyborne. So now from this, we will understand that what exactly are the satellite-based internet. It is a wireless internet connectivity in which the internal signal is relayed to the end user via low Earth orbits. Now what are low Earth orbits? These are the orbits which extends up to 2000 km from the Earth's surface. So now let us understand the working of the internet satellite system. Suppose this is the internet service provider, that is ISP. This is, as you can see, is a satellite, and this is your home. So what happens is that your provider, this entity, sends a fiber internet signal to a satellite. The internet signal then comes to you and is captured by your satellite dish. Your dish is connected to a modem which connects your computer to the internet signals. This whole process is reverted back to the satellite and then to the internet service provider, and this whole system provides you with the satellite based internet services. Now we will understand the importance of satellite based internet in India. The first is that it would help the government services to reach all the citizens in faster, better and efficient manner. Because we have discussed that these satellites are placed in the low Earth orbits which are just 2000 kilometers from the Earth's surface. So as you can see that the distance is very short and hence it does not allow a lot of diffusion and disturbances in the waves, and that is why we have a faster, better and efficient internet connection. Second is that it would also provide direct connectivity for the far reaching and inaccessible areas such as Ladakh or the northeastern states, for example the hills of Nagaland, the areas of Manipur, etc. However, as of now, these services are primarily used for the emergency use, critical trans-oriented communications and to connect the remote areas which presently do not have a good connectivity. So that is why we are investing so much in the satellite based internet, because it suits the India's socio-economic reality and provides a way ahead for India to go for faster, better and efficient internet connectivity, which in turn will also help India to realize the aims of Digital India. So summing up the entire topic once again, the significance of the formation of ISPA lies in the fact that government is planning to mobilize the resources, boosting the investment and enhancing the innovation by leveraging the potential of the private sector, given the fact that throughout the world the private players in the space sector are emerging. The second, we saw the stated aims of the ISPA, which are to boost the government's effort to make India a leader in the commercial based sector using a multi-stakeholder approach to enable a sustainable policy framework. Then we saw the various stakeholders involved in this organization, and in the end we discussed that what is the basic concept of the satellite based internet, what are low Earth orbits and why satellite based internet is important for India. Now is the time for question of the day. First, we will discuss the question asked in the yesterday's DNS. The question was that with respect to the Global Hunger Index, consider the following statements, and you have to find the correct statements out of these two. The first statement says that it is released by UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and the second statement says that values of the GHI are determined on the factors of undernourishment, child wasting and child mortality only. So this is a tricky question. The first is straightforward because this statement is false. It is not released by FAO. Here are the names of the organizations which jointly publish the Global Hunger Index. And the second statement is also false because it does not mention about child stunting. As you can see that the parameters which are taken to measure the Global Hunger Index is undernourishment, child wasting, child stunting. This one is not mentioned in the question, and child mortality. But the statement says the only. That is why both the statements are incorrect and the answer is D. So the question for today is that the main asteroid belt lies in between which planets? Option A, Earth and Mars. Option B, Mars and Jupiter. Option C, Jupiter and Saturn. Or option D, Uranus and Neptune.